it's time now for my very first guest, who I could talk to truly for hours, but I'm going to take what I can get today when it comes to attorney and legal television commentator Anne Bremner. She always has her pulse on the legal cases the country is talking about. So welcome back, Anne. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, and congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. So we have so many questions here as a team, as does all of the country, I feel like. So I want to dive in on one case in particular that's close to home, the murder trial of Brian Kohberger. It was supposed to go to trial in August, but he pled guilty last week.
Right.
So please give us an update. Were you surprised at this?
Shocked. I was just shocked. I
Really?
mean, well, especially because it's been pending for so long, continued so many times, and the family's been patiently waiting for a trial date. And they don't get closure. I hate that word for a family in a murder case about their victim and anything. I mean, I could go on and on about that, but the bottom line is one was only informed by email, one family. It's terrible.
That's
and
terrible.
so basically you've got that kind of shock, but the other shock is that they took the death off the table without really getting anything in exchange other than a plea, and there was so much evidence against him that really wasn't a good exchange. I mean, they would have had him convicted, I think, anytime they tried this case based on what we know so far, and there's a gag order, so we don't even know everything. But there's enough evidence from what we've seen to convict him, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's, I guess, what was so shocking, is you kind of thought it was an open shut case.
Right.
So why the plea deal?
Right, and like we always say, don't plead the death penalty, don't use it as a plea bargain. Remember the Ridgeway case, the Green River Killer? They did it there, but that's because he gave information about a lot of locations of victims' remains.
True.
And so that was an exchange that was worth it to the prosecutor at that time, even though it was controversial. So why did they do it here when there was nothing in exchange for taking that off the table?
That makes sense. And like you mentioned, some families are not happy because it doesn't really give them closure.
Right.
So what, if any, rights do family members really have during this?
Well, we have victims' rights, like Marcy's Law you've heard of in California. We have victims' rights legislation, federal and state. And we have basically a constitutional amendment in our state to give victims' rights. It's supposedly the same as defendants. But they have a right to be heard, they have a right for input. They don't have a right to decide what happens in a case, but they have a right for input at every stage, critical stage of a criminal prosecution.
Gosh, and so do prosecutors need to consider their wishes then, you feel like?
Yes, and that's what's so upsetting, I think, to the family, because, and we saw at least, one father out protesting outside of court, and it was a heartbreaker. I mean, his daughter's been murdered, and he basically was told by email what was going to happen, and that's just not excusable.
It really is. And why now? So does Brian Kohberger not have to give an account of what happened?
That's another great question.
Happens?
That's a great question, because when you plead guilty, when anyone pleads guilty, they have to give a factual basis for the plea. I did this, very basic. In King County, I did, whatever is charged. But they didn't ask, when they negotiated this plea, to get an accounting of why did you do it? Who are you targeting? Where's the knife? All those kinds of things. They could have asked for that information to be imparted by him, but it looks like they didn't. They just basically had a plea like you watched the hearing I did, and it was like, do you plead guilty? Yes, I do. That's all we heard.
So there was nothing in there that said he had to follow up and say specifically what happened.
No, it's just I think to everybody in the public, the question's why. Why did he do this?
Right.
And why don't they ask him? Why did you do this? His defense fought tooth and nail in this case. They filed so many briefs. I read them all. It was exhausting. Like, not another brief, but they worked so hard, and they just basically walked in and got the plea deal. And I think, were they the ones that really pushed for it? Yes. The prosecution, did they push for it? Sounds like yes. And they didn't make a bargain, you make a deal with the devil, so to speak. They didn't make a bargain that gave the answer to why.
Do you think he ever will have the opportunity to say something with just your history and what you know in other cases, or do you think he's just going to be silent from here on out, and that this is all we heard was, yes, I'm guilty, and that's it?
It'll be interesting. At the sentencing, he has a right, they call it allocute, where he can speak to the court about sentencing. And the victims can be heard then too. That's part of the sentencing procedure. But there's no son of Sam law in Idaho. Which is interesting. Would he be able to go out and sell his story? I don't think so, because even if he did, the families would come back with restitution requests and basically, orders and get anything that he would make. But, knowing the way he's acted so far, I don't think he says anything.
Really?
You know, I mean, I'm no psychologist or psychiatrist, but I kind of think so far, based on the way he's been, the only time we heard him speak was when he said he pled guilty.
Yeah, it was just a simple yes.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, yes, yes. Anything else that you want people to know about this case in particular? What's coming up before we move on to our next one?
No, other than it's such a tragedy, and I think we all feel that, and we all feel that it's unresolved, you know, and it should have been resolved. It should have been heard in a court of law. Now, whether you're for or against the death penalty, I think that those families deserve to know what happened. And a prosecutor can't say to a family, we want to spare you the details. Let the family make that decision, right?
Completely agree. So let's talk Diddy. This is also on a lot of people's minds.
Right.
Do you think that he was overcharged? I mean, I was shocked.
I know. I kept thinking, did he not? You know, did he do it? I mean, that's just,
right.
I'm sure they've said that before, and publicly, I'm not the first one. But yeah, I was shocked because, you know, it seems so strong, all the evidence, but it's in federal court, and there are no cameras in federal court. That's the thing that people don't see is like in Diddy's case or R. Kelly, federal, no cameras in the courtroom, so we don't know exactly what's happening.
True.
The way we did in OJ or Kohberger or any other cases. But yeah, I was shocked, and I think the fact that he's convicted on a couple of counts and the judge didn't give him bail, said he was still dangerous. So he may be looking at some significant time.
I know. Do you have any idea of how much jail time we're thinking?
Well, it could be 20 years. The two counts he's convicted on, if they're served consecutively, it could be 20 years. It's a 10-year sentence on each. If it's concurrent, which means at the same time, then it's going to be a 10-year. And the question is whether it's similar or the same criminal conduct. That gives you concurrent. But the judge said he's dangerous. And under federal bail law and reform in, I think it was 1984, that they have to look at dangerousness, and you don't have a presumption of bail. So I think he was shocked. Remember, he was like looking at the jurors and doing this and the hearts and everything in the courtroom, and then all of a sudden the judge says, not so fast. You're not going to be released.
Do you think he's going to get more charges civilly too?
Yeah. Wasn't there one the other day? I think I read somebody already filed something.
I'm sure. Yeah. That's just the beginning. Okay.
Right.
The country was also riveted by the Karen Reed case, acquitted of the killing of her boyfriend, John O'Keefe. Why do you think the country was so riveted on this case?
You know, it's kind of like the Lacey Peterson case. You remember
Yes.
the girl next door? I mean, you know, Christmas, pregnant. You know, you look at Karen Reed and like police corruption. It's like a horse race too. It's like, ooh, did she do it? You know, like there was a taillight broken and he's in the snow, but nobody sees the body in the snow, and then everyone's in the house and they don't see anything. And then she's saying, did I hit him? And she says, well, I didn't say that. And then someone else puts puts a question on Google like, how long to die in the body in the snow, something. It's just, I didn't do that. My friend did it. So, and then they had Turtle Boy, who started the pink outfit brigade of protesters.
She's had this huge support. Do you think that was helpful too?
Yes, I do, because the jurors kind of run a gauntlet sometimes, and they did in this case. You know, when we had the Manny Ellis case in Tacoma, I was representing one of the officers, and there were you'd see people out front and, you know, protesting, etc. Sure, it makes a difference, and the jurors didn't say that, but it was a close call, that case. And I guess when you see a lot of public support every day, you kind of think, you know, maybe there's something to it.
Absolutely. Assuming that there's still a murderer out there, will the government be looking, do you think? No?
I don't think so.
Why?
I think that there was a lot of people that felt, in Boston, that felt that she had done it. And you're talking about police personnel, right? And so she can say they're corrupt, and that, you know, how did he get killed in the house, by the way? We never learned that. That was part of the defense. They don't have to prove anything, but still, they said that he was killed, you know, in the house, and there's no evidence of that. So my guess is no.
Oh my gosh. Okay, you touched on this earlier, but any of the suspects in any of these cases, can they write a book?
Yeah, the Son of Sam law was found unconstitutional by the Supreme Court, but then states have there's kind of workarounds on some of it. But the answer is, even if you can, and also look at the Barefoot Bandit, that was on federal, and if you could, then it would go to the victims. So, so do you want to do it? Maybe you can in certain states. Each state's a little bit different. The federal system's pretty consistent, but you're going to end up paying a lot of people back.
Definitely.
And it's not just a court payback, but it's a monetary payback.
And thank you so much. We can't thank you enough for breaking all these down for us today. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure, and congratulations again.
Oh, thank you.